Hi dear children, how are you? Hope everyone is fine. Today let's learn a new story. The story's name is What Happened to the Reptiles. The story says that each person has his own unique importance and role. People in this world often fight and create disturbance in the name of religion. A village, Pampupadi, in the story developed a new and different world. There, varied people lived together happily in perfect harmony, irrespective of any kind of differences. Let's get into the story. What happened to the reptiles? Pampupadi is a peaceful village inhabited by a variety of people. Prem, the narrator of the story, flees his village under unfortunate conditions to reach Pampupadi by chance. An old resident of the village looks after him and tells him an interesting story. You may not believe this story, but I can tell you it's true because I have been to Pampupadi, a village on the edge of the jungle. It is on a cliff. Cliff means a pointed, high-end point of a rock. And the vast forest stretches below like a mossy green carpet. There are many kinds of people in the village. Dark, fair, tall, short. They speak many languages. Some eat meat, some don't. Some pray in a small temple at the edge of the forest. Others pray in a mosque some miles away. The story is narrated by Prem, who fled his village due to a riot and reached Pampupadi by chance. An old man from the village gave shelter to Prem and told him a story. The narrator tells us that we may not believe the story, but it's true. He had been to Pampupadi, a village on the outskirts of a jungle. It was on a cliff and a huge forest spread out like a carpet of moss beneath. Pampupadi was a peaceful village where people of different sizes, color, religion, language, taste lived together. See the next paragraph. My name is Prem and I live many hundred miles away from Pampupadi. I had heard about the village, but I had never been there. Then last year something terrible happened. The people of my own village went mad. Far, far away in a place they have never ever been to, a temple or mosque had been burned down and they went mad. They started fighting with one another. Some had to run away in the middle of the night, and at 3 in the morning, as I lay in my house, half awake to the sounds of hate and violence, there was a fire. Many houses were burnt in the fire. One of them was mine. The narrator here tells that he used to live far away from Pampupadi and he had heard a lot about the village. He had a wish to visit it but somehow couldn't. But last year, horrible riots happened in his village. People went mad and were fighting with each other. The mosques and temples were burned. His own house was also burned. People had to run away. See the next paragraph. I managed to grab means to hold or catch, a few clothes, some coins, my little Ganesh statue, and I ran for a day and a night, resting whenever my legs would not carry me any further. I jumped onto a train, then on a bus. No tickets. Never mind. Everyone seemed to be running. Finally, I found myself in Pampupadi and I saw some villagers gathered near a well. I ran to them and before I could say a thing, I fainted. The narrator managed to take a few things with him and ran throughout day and night. He took rest whenever his legs were not in a position to support him. He traveled by bus and train all without a ticket. Finally, he reached Pampupadi and noticed some villagers near a well. He ran to them and before saying anything, he fainted. Let's move on to the next paragraph. When I opened my eyes, I saw an old man with white hair, white beard, and shining black eyes bending over me. For the next few days, he looked after me, putting food in my mouth and bringing me sweet, cool water from the stream. He rubbed my feet gently and made the pain go away. Neighbors, strangers, everyone came to visit me. See, when he came to his senses, he saw an old man leaning over him. For a few days he took care of him, gave him food, sweets, water and all. He rubbed his feet softly and made him free from pain. Everyone from the neighborhood, though strangers, visited him. Tell me, grandfather, I said to him one day, I have never seen people like the villagers here. In my village, people fight with those who pray to another god. But here, this seems like a very strange place. The narrator asked the old man to tell him about the place as it seemed very strange to him. He had seen people fighting with others in the name of religion, but here it was different. Prem, replied the old man, I will tell you the story of Pampupadi. You can take this story back to your village. Maybe it will heal some of its wounds and dry some of its sores. Oh, grandfather, I said anxiously, don't say that. What I have seen in my village makes me burn with shame. I never want to go back there. Anxiously means curiously. The old man told him the story of the place and asked him to take that story to his village, hoping to heal the wounds of the people of that place. But the narrator spoke with anxiety and asked the old man not to ask him to return to that village, as after witnessing the riots there, he didn't wish to return. But that's exactly why you must go back, he said in a soft voice. I kept quiet. I didn't want to argue with him, and I wanted to hear his story. The old man told him firmly that the disturbance of the place was a bigger reason for him to go there. The narrator was more interested in the story, so he didn't argue. It happened a long time ago, he began. So long ago that there were no schools and no teachers. Children lived in caves with their parents and helped them to collect fruit and berries from the forest. At that time, there were no tigers or panthers or elephants in Pampupadi forest. There were only reptiles, many kinds of reptiles. Now you know what reptiles are? Snakes, crocodiles, turtles, lizards. And you know that a reptile has scales on its body and it lays eggs. Every month, the reptiles of Pampupadi had a big meeting. Everyone came, the pretty, excited snakes, the slow, thoughtful tortoises, the clever, quick lizards, and the moody crocodiles, grumpy because they were out of water. The president of these meetings was Makara, the biggest crocodile of the forest. All the animals thought he was very important. When someone is strong and powerful, it is difficult not to go along with what he says or does. So he began the story. The old man said that during olden times there were no schools. Children lived in caves with their parents and used to help them. At the point of time, there were no other animals in the jungle, but only reptiles had their existence. A large variety of reptiles were ruling the forest. The strongest and the biggest was Makara the crocodile. All the animals thought of him as important. They often had a meeting once in the month, which was attended by each one of them. Now, one day a strange thing happened. It was a week before one of the monthly meetings. Makara sent a letter to the tortoises asking them not to come to the meeting. Ahiste, the big all-star tortoise with black and yellow pictures on his shell, was very angry. What does this mean? He shouted. How dare they? But not one of the tortoises had the courage to attend the meeting. They were so few, the others so many. One day a very strange thing occurred. Just 1 week before the monthly meeting, Makara sent a letter to the tortoises asking them not to come to the meeting. The big old star tortoise with black and yellow pictures on his shell felt angry and shouted at this. How could they speak like that to them? But not a single tortoise had the courage to attend the meeting as they were lesser in number. Before the meeting, the giant Makara, giant means very big, polished his teeth with the red flowers of the tree by the river till they sparkled. Everyone was waiting for him at the meeting place. Before the start of the meeting, the big Makara polished his teeth with red flowers by the riverside till they started sparkling. Everyone was waiting for him. Brothers and sisters, he began. All the reptiles, even the beautiful king cobra, stopped talking. Makara continued his speech. I have decided that we don't need the tortoises. I had told them not to come today. Brothers and sisters, can you tell me why we won't like the tortoises? The reptiles looked this way and that. They felt very uncomfortable. The snakes hissed anxiously. The lizards wriggled their tails. Wriggle means to move body in small, quick movement. The crocodiles opened their jaws even wider. Makara addressed the meeting by calling them all brothers and sisters, and everyone stopped talking to listen to him. He said that he had decided that they didn't need to tortoises. He had told them not to come. He addressed the gathering as brothers and sisters and asked if they knew why they did not like the tortoises. The reptiles looked here and there as they didn't feel easy. They all started moving. The snakes hissed. Lizards shook their tails and the crocodiles opened their jaws bigger. But, said one little lizard. No buts, shouted Makara. There was silence. I think, said a baby crocodile. No, I thinks, screamed Makara, so loudly that the fruit in the tree above him rained down. After that, no one had the courage to speak. Makara cleared his throat and showed a few more teeth. Well, he said, I'll tell you why we don't like the tortoises. They are so slow, so stupid. They even carry their houses on their backs. Whoever heard of such a stupid thing? Now you lizards, you live in trees. Would you ever carry a tree on your back, would you? Small frightened voices answered together, No, we wouldn't, but... The lizard started to speak with but Makara screamed, No buts, and silenced her. Then the baby crocodile commenced with I think, but Makara silenced it too by saying no I think. He spoke so loudly that the fruits from the tree fell down. After this, no one had the courage to speak. Makara cleared his throat and clarified the reason why they didn't like the tortoises. He explained that they were slow and stupid. They carried their houses on their backs. He asked lizards if they would carry their home tree on their back ever. The lizard answered in a fearful voice no and tried to speak further saying but. No buts, now listen. I have told the tortoises that they will have to move out of Pampupadi. When they go, we will have more of everything, more food, more water, more space. I want them out by tomorrow. But because they are such slow coaches, I have given them 1 week. By next Tuesday, we won't have a single tortoise left in this jungle. Makara again silenced them by saying no buts. He further informed that he had told the tortoises to leave Pampupadi, and once they leave, all the reptiles who are left in the jungle would have more of everything, be it water, food or space. He wanted them to leave the very next day, but because they were slow, he gave them 1 week's time. He called them slow coaches. And by the following Tuesday, they were all gone. At first, the animals were sad, but then they realized that what Makara had said was true. There was more food, more water and more space for them, but soon a strange smell began to fill the forest. It was the smell of rot. rotting fruit on the ground, rotting animals in the river. This was what the tortoises used to eat, and even Makara had to go about holding his nose with his big claws. Then what happened? By next Tuesday, all tortoises left the jungle. Poor tortoises, isn't it? Initially, all the animals were sad, but gradually they agreed with Makara as they were able to have more of everything. But very shortly, a strange smell began to spread in the jungle. It was the smell of rotten fruits and animals, which tortoises used to eat. They helped keep the jungle clean and fresh. The smell was so strong that even Makara had to pass through the jungle by covering his nose. A month passed by and then the same thing happened all over again. But this time it was the snakes. Makara wrote them one of his letters. They were to leave the forest, and since they could move fast, they had to go in a day. Naga, the head of the snakes, pleaded for more time, but Makara would not give it. At the meeting, he silenced the others, the lizards and crocodiles, with even louder shouts and threats. Snakes are slimy, he said, and they make funny noises. Who wants such weird creatures around? Again, no one dared to disagree with Makara, and so the snakes left. After a month, the same thing was repeated with snakes. Being fast, the snakes were told to vacate the place in a day. Naga, the head of the snakes, asked for more time, but Makara didn't agree. At the meeting, he silenced everyone, lizards, crocodiles, with his louder shouts and threats. He gave the argument in support of his decision that snakes were unpleasant, slimy. Slimy means unpleasant animals to have around. They made funny noises. To this, no one could have the courage to oppose Makara's decision, and the snakes left. For a while, the animals of the forest were happy because they had been a little afraid of the snakes. You never knew when one of them might lose his temper and spit some venom. Venom means poison at you. And it took only a little poison to kill you after all. For some time, the animals were happy because of the fear of snakes, as they were very unpredictable and at any time they could spit poison in anger against anyone, which was dangerous and could kill the other person. A few weeks passed and the animals of the forest looked tired and fed up. The rats, now that there were no snakes to eat them, the rats had taken over the forest and they were having a wonderful time. They were everywhere, on the trees, in the grass, in the bushes, on the ground. They ate up the eggs of the lizards and the crocodiles. There would be no babies that year. Makara's own nest of eggs had been chewed up. After a few weeks, all the animals in the forest felt tired and irritated. Why? The rats were happy as there were no snakes who would eat them. Everywhere in the forest, rats could be seen having good times. They even ate eggs of crocodiles and lizards. Because of that, no new babies came in the forest that year. Even they ate Makara's eggs. Then Makara had a great idea. He called a meeting of the crocodiles and said, "Wouldn't it be wonderful if we, the crocodiles, could have the whole jungle for ourselves? No one but us. These lizards, now just look at them. They have the strangest habits, and some of them even change color. How can we trust someone who is green one minute, red the next? Let's get rid of them." By now, the crocodiles were really scared of Makara, so they clapped and cheered. Makara was pleased. The lizards left the forest, some with their babies on their backs. Now Makara thought of keeping the whole jungle for themselves alone. So he called a meeting of crocodiles and expressed his wish before them. He kept his opinion, saying that the lizards were not trustworthy as they kept changing color. By that time, the crocodiles were afraid of Makara, so they supported and said yes to his ideas. As a result, the lizards left the forest with their young ones lying on the parents' backs. But now, when life should have been wonderful for the crocodiles of Pampupadi, all kinds of awful things began to happen. To begin with, the rats grew bolder by the day. They became so fearless that they jumped and turned somersaults on the crocodiles' backs, and there were too many frogs. Somersaults means physical exercise movement. They seemed to be growing larger, and there was no one to eat them but the crocodiles. These huge frogs began to eat the baby crocodiles and the insects. Now that the lizards were gone, there were millions of them, growing bigger and nastier by the day. Nastier means unclean. And now, being all alone in the jungle, instead of having a wonderful time, weird and strange things started happening. The rats became bolder and danced on the crocodiles' backs. Many frogs came and grew larger, and they all were fearless as no one was there to eat them. These bigger frogs rather started eating babies of crocodiles. Insects also grew in number as lizards were gone. They grew bigger and daring. It was a terrible time for the crocodiles. They couldn't understand what had happened to their happy forest home. Then one day, a squeaky means making a very high sound. Squeaky little voice piped up at one of their meetings. We know why the forest has gone crazy, don't we? All this gave a very difficult time to the crocodiles. They were not able to understand what had happened to their happy forest home. One day in the meeting, a squeaky voice was raised, saying that they all knew what wrong had been done to the forest. Suddenly everyone was silent. They looked at Makara fearfully, but to their surprise he looked nervous. He shook a rat off his tail and asked the small crocodile, "Why, little fellow?" It all began with the thought. Okay, said Makara. There is no need to talk so much. Makara didn't want to admit he was wrong, but it didn't matter. All the crocodiles knew now that he was not all that strong or powerful or always right. They sent urgent messages all over the place for the tortoises, snakes and lizards to come back to Pampupadi. And what a great day it was when these creatures came back, family after family, with their little ones on their backs or straggling behind. Straggling means to move and spread in a very shabby manner, shouting at their parents to wait for them. Everyone became silent, being fearful of Makara, but Makara himself was nervous. He became weaker, but wasn't ready to accept his mistakes. But all the crocodiles knew, and they took a decision and wrote letters all over to send messages to the animals to come back to the forest. It was a great day as all the animals started coming back, one family after another, shouting at each other, children on the backs moving shabbily and hurriedly. In 2 months, the forest was back to normal. The rats disappeared, and the insects and the smell and the wall finally went back to its familiar old self. In just 2 months, the forest became normal. The rats were not visible. The insects and the smell were also gone. The wall became normal. Well, Prem, said the old man, have you fallen asleep? Did my story send you off to dreamland? I shook my head. No, grandfather. I was just thinking, maybe it's time I went back to my own village because I have a story to tell them. But what if they don't listen to me? We can only keep at it, my son. Tell these stories again and again to more and more people. Some of them may laugh at you or say your stories are not true, but they may remember them one day and understand that each of us has a place in this strange, funny world of ours. The old man asked Prem if he had fallen asleep and whether his story had sent him to dreamland. Prem shook his head and said that no, actually he was thinking that it was the right time to go back to the village and share this story with them. But he was scared that no one would listen to him. The old man advised him that they had to tell that story again and again to more people. They might laugh at it or call the story a fake one, but they had to keep telling it with hope that one day they would understand that each person has his own unique place in this world. My dear children, did you enjoy the story? Hope you have enjoyed. Then let's discuss the questions and answers. In what way is Pampupadi different from any other village? Do you know that? People of varied religions were living together in harmony. That's why. Why is Prem determined not to return to his village? He is determined not to return to his village because he has seen a lot of hatred and violent riots in his village where people were not just fighting but were also killing each other. Next one. Why did Makara dislike tortoises, snakes and lizards? Makara disliked tortoises because they were very slow and carried their homes with them. He disliked snakes because they were slimy and venomous and could kill anyone in anger with their venomous spit. Then he didn't like lizards because of their habit of changing color of their body. What went wrong when the tortoises, snakes and lizards left the forest? Every animal has its own role. So whenever any kind of animals left, there was imbalance. When tortoises left, the forest was filled with the smell of rotten fruits. When snakes left, the number of rats was increased, which was disturbing for other animals as it ate their eggs. When lizards left, there was an increase in the number of frogs and insects. They caused disturbance by eating baby crocodiles. Why do you think Prem wants to tell the story of the reptiles to the people of his village? Prem was impressed by the people of Pampupadi. He found their togetherness exemplary, so he thought of sharing it with the people of his village so that he could inspire them to live together joyfully. My dear children, what is the moral of the story? What do you think? Each and every person has his own unique place in this world. That is the moral of this story. We should respect each and everyone. See you in the next class. Thank you.